so we can get started promptly.
Keep it going, baby.
Montgomery County.
No, I mean.
This is northern Virginia. No, I feel comfortable. Cool kids. I don't cause Yeah. Come flew up. Good well.
I know, I heard you before you were born. I'll say it when I'm up here.
Convertible. This is special rag top.
Did you get one? Actually, well, then you do our planet.
Well, yeah, I actually it's pretty.
Yeah.
My wife.
No. Oh, were you building? Spicy.
You gotta do.
That's a host section, like, and tell it about our national image.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually.
Mayor.
Oh.
I remember. Right in Monday.
Well, yeah, it's.
Anytime after that, it's not me. But I want to like to.
And good afternoon to everyone. The April Council of Government meeting is now called to order. My name is Ruben Collins. I'm president of the Board of County Commissioners in Charles County and chair of the COG Board of Directors. We'd like to thank the National Association for Counties for providing this venue for our meeting today. And we will officially begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag. The United States. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So as a reminder, this meeting is being live streamed and is open to the public. For today's chair report, I'd just like to remind everyone, if you haven't already, please RSVP to the COG Leadership Retreat, which is being held June 26th and 27th in Cambridge, Maryland. An email has been sent out already with additional information, and a link has information and a form for you to fill out. So please, if you can, we look forward to seeing you. I know the last year's retreat was very informative, and it is an outstanding opportunity to learn more about COG in general. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Mercer, who will give the executive director's report.
Make sure this is working. Hello, everybody, and I will keep my remarks brief. We've got an exciting agenda, engaging agenda. We've got some cameras out front, which we can always gauge how interesting the agenda is by how many folks respond. So that is a good thing. I will note on the leadership retreat, we're going to do something fun on the Saturday. We're going to go to Horn Point Laboratory, which is in Cambridge, University of Maryland's research center, and we're going to learn about some of our bay cleanup work and research up front and personal on the bay there, which will be 5 miles away from the hotel, so it'll be all good. A couple of legislative updates. We had 3 items that we've been working on in the state capitals here in the district. One around transit funding with DMV moves, the other around the issue of ticket reciprocity, and the third around talent capital. Obviously, the budget you've seen in Virginia is a bit stalled. In DC, it'll be moving forward shortly, and in Maryland, it is wrapping up. On the issue of DMV moves and transit funding, I think we need to kind of wait for the dust to settle in all 3 states. But it looks like if it's not this session, that I think you'll see a commitment for next session, some movement in Maryland and Virginia. I think there's still a plan and a path forward to get some things done this session and obviously continue working with our district partners. We have been around to brief most of your boards on the transit plans and funding that came out of BMV moves, and I thank you for that. On ticket reciprocity, and we've got the CAO for the district here, Kevin Donahue, and the mayor's chief of staff, Tomas. They have been real leaders in this space working with Maryland and Virginia. I would just say stay tuned. I think we're going to see some really positive developments really soon, and there are ticket reciprocity budget amendments and study bills in the approved budgets in Maryland. And I think what you'll see in Virginia and some movement there. Lastly, talent capital. We're going to get a deep dive on that today, but this is the first time that our secretaries of labor from the 3 states have come together with the workforce boards and dozens of regional partners to put together one site for folks to be able to come and see what job opportunities are available and get them jobs in this region. And we have 200,000 sitting in the approved budget in Maryland. We have a commitment of 200,000 from the District of Columbia, and we have budget amendments in Virginia for 200,000. That'll be the first time that COG has been called out in the same sessions in all 3 states to jointly fund an initiative, and that'll get us down the road another 2 years. Visualize 2050. Conti is here. A big congratulations to Conti and his team. Obviously, the work around that TPB did around Visualize 2050 wrapped up in December. It was submitted to the feds, and record time, multiple different secretariats with the federal government turning around and approval for Visualize 2050. So a big round of applause to Conti. CPC, our Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee, they had their 100th meeting last week at the Press Club. Talked about some of the big environmental goals that CPC has set and accomplishments. Previous members like Penny Gross were there, and it was great to recognize CPC at their 100th meeting. Had a very well-attended fire health and safety symposium on March 13th. It was firefighters and safety experts from DC, Maryland, and Virginia gathered to share tactical insights, operational safety strategies, and vital mental health resources like cancer and cardiac screenings. You're going to hear from Scott Boggs, who runs that team later, and the number of projects that Scott and his team work on. One, it's 28 different public safety programs they run for the region, but you're going to hear about a program that he was asked to stand up by the federal government related to unmanned aerial systems, AS systems that most folks just probably unaware that COG is touching. So really impressive amount of work that he is doing. If you hear from your constituents that they're getting a survey on travel survey, our regional travel survey is launched and out the door. It's going to 170,000 household. The last time we did this was 2018. This helps planners and community leaders understand transportation needs and inform decision makers about future investments. It's about commuting, but not just commuting, all travel in the region. So it's a legit survey. Encourage them to fill it out. I was in Montgomery County last week. Congratulations to Montgomery County to being our first jurisdiction to sign on to the Farm Committee's Food Procurement Challenge, which essentially is a commitment to source more food for the county locally. And that commitment and pledge is on our website. And Lindsay Smith and the farm team, if they have not been in touch with you, they will be, to encourage your county, city, or jurisdiction to take up that pledge. I think that's just about it. You have an internal newsletter. I just wanted to share that with you, that we communicate with our own staff so you can get a flavor for that. And lastly, I'll just say our May meeting is at Goodwill, which is the NOMA stop, so just up the road. And we have 5 of the largest nonprofits in the region talking about what they have seen over the last year in terms of the social safety net and their members and the constituencies that they service. So thank you, Mayor Reed. We'll have Melwood will be there, the Community Foundation, the Capital Area Food Bank, Goodwill, and United Way. And we'll be very focused kind of on the type of work that they do, the constituencies that they serve. Talk a little bit about the economy today with talent capital, but I think they see firsthand some different patterns I think they want to share with you all. So with that, that concludes my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. The next item on the agenda is amendments to the agenda. Hearing that there are none, we'll move on to approval of the March 11th minutes. I move for a motion to approve the minutes of the March 11th meeting. Is there a second? Been moved and properly second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We have one resolution on the consent agenda, and that is for COG to receive and expend grant funding for the Regional Pro Housing Grant. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution R 2020-26. Is there a second? It's been moved. It's been seconded. Are there any questions from board members? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Now, agenda item number 7, which is the 2025 State of the Commute Survey results. We will have at this time Daniel Sheehan, COG's Transportation Operations Program Director, to brief us on the results of the 2025 State of the Commute Survey. Sheehan.
All right, thank you so much. It sounds like the mic is on. Great, so I'll be happy to take it away, the presentation. There we go. Closer, okay. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for having me here this afternoon. I'm excited to brief you on the findings of our 2025 State of the Commute Survey. This is a fairly robust survey. It's our largest and longest running survey for commuters in the Washington, D.C. region. And it provides a very comprehensive picture of how workers travel across this region. We do this survey every 3 years, and we survey thousands of workers. Every jurisdiction is represented in this survey that is part of the COG footprint. So the entire region is included in these findings. The 2025 survey generated over 7,500 responses, and it's particularly significant because it's the first one that gives us a clear and stabilizing picture of what commuting looks like post-pandemic. We're now looking at what commuting, what commute trends are driving people when they get to and from work, and how they continue to evolve and stabilize. Findings from these trends will show a window into how our region is changing, and it gives us a foundation for the conversation that you may already be having with your constituents about traffic, congestion, and costs of commuting. So to understand where we are today, I think it helps to remember where we've been in the past few years. 2019, when we did the survey, the region was humming. We had a strong economy. Our office spaces were mostly full. There was also heavy traffic and robust transit ridership. When the pandemic hit in 2020, as we all know, everything changed. Most people were working from home, roads were relatively quiet, and transit ridership had fallen off of a cliff. Now, here we are in 2026, even though this survey was done in 2025, and we're somewhere in between. We find that we may actually be emerging with the new normal of what commuting looks like in our region, and it seems to be stabilizing. Workers are gradually returning to offices, traffic is rebuilding, and transit is recovering. But the commute of now is not the commute that we had in 2019. Commute patterns have shifted in ways that will likely influence how we plan, invest, and communicate with our communities about options available to them. With that context in place, we can jump into some of these notable shifts that we've observed from our survey. So perhaps the biggest story in this report is telework. Nearly half of all regional workers, which are 48% to be exact, still telework either full-time or on a hybrid schedule. That's down from the pandemic peak, but it is dramatically higher than it was before COVID. And critically, hybrid work has doubled. Sorry about that. More than a third of hybrid workers now split their week between home and office. So what does that mean on the ground when you're on the roads or on transit? It means that 1.6 million commute trips are being outright eliminated every single day. So that's a real relief on our roads and our transit systems, but it also means that the patterns have changed. The old Monday through Friday rush hour that we experienced pre-pandemic doesn't exist the way it used to. And you guys probably see that when you're out on the roads. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are now the peak days, and that has real implications for how we schedule our transit services, manage congestion on the highways, and optimize our commuter assistance programs like Commuter Connections to meet the new standards of commuters. So before I get into the next point, this is kind of a trivia question of sorts. We segmented out the different commuters in the region between federal workers, state and local workers, nonprofit workers, and those who work for private sector, and we categorized them by their likelihood to telework. Can anyone guess in 2019, before the pandemic, who was the most likely segment to telework?
Federal.
Federal? You got it. Federal teleworkers, and it was federal by a long shot. 48% of federal workers teleworked in 2019. For a reference, only 14% of state and local government workers teleworked in 2019. Now let's fast forward to the survey findings now in 2025 or 2026. What do you think that breakdown is? Are federal teleworkers still the most likely to telework? Now I've seen head shaking. I kind of led you into that one, but it's very true. Well, maybe I'll have a final Jeopardy at the end to tie things all together. But what we found actually is that number it grew first to 79% of all federal workers were teleworking during the pandemic, and then it dropped to 23% at present. So if you think about that pendulum swing, about half of federal workers were teleworking before the pandemic, 79% during the pandemic, and now back down to 23% is a huge shift. For what it's worth, the other three sectors, of course, they grew in 2022 in our survey in their ability to telework. However, they've all only dropped anywhere between 6 and 10%. So it's relatively stable. If anything, you're getting a few more people called back to the office a little more frequently, but it's not completely gone in the other sectors. So yeah, very, very interesting observation there. So now I'm going to set telework aside for a bit and get into some of the findings related to those who actually commute physically to their workplace. So the people who do commute to work, we are finding that current travel choices mostly mirror patterns observed before the pandemic, but with some nuanced differences that I'll get into here. Driving alone has essentially returned to pre-pandemic levels, accounting to 57% of commute trips. And that's not surprising given that the return to office has occurred, but it is a signal that if we don't actively invest in alternatives, congestion will continue to worsen as people are more predisposed to drive alone than to find an alternative. Even with that growth in drive alone commuting, transit has also surged back to be the second most popular commute mode in the region, which means telework then has fallen quite a bit from its height in the pandemic. Transit share of commute trips dropped to just 8% in 2022, a pandemic era low point for the systems. But in 2025, it's back up to 22%. So that's a remarkable rebound. And we know from the survey that it didn't just happen by accident. We've seen, based on feedback from our respondents, that it happened in part because transit agencies restored service and improved reliability. The system got better, and therefore the riders came back when it was time to come back to the office. So one of the takeaways we see from these new travel trends and commuter preferences is that the conditions exist to grow transit ridership and reduce drive-alone commuting, which is one of our priority goals here at Commuter Connections, but only if we keep investing in making those alternatives genuinely attractive. Another useful inference we learned from the survey is why people make the commute choices they do. This is especially important to Commuter Connections as it helps inform our regional marketing messaging, and it could also be helpful for local governments seeking to better the lives of commuters in their jurisdictions through policy investments that will optimize their constituents' commutes. The top reasons commuters choose transit, carpooling, or biking over driving alone are to avoid stress on the roads, save money, and to be able to use their travel time productively, which could be something as simple as reading, getting a head start on work, or just decompressing and letting the train drive you to where you need to go instead of fighting the beltway traffic. These practical preferences align directly with what good transit provides to commuters in a competitive landscape. Now, when it comes to the commute satisfaction trend we've observed, the story is very encouraging. Transit satisfaction has surged since 2022. Metro rail satisfaction alone jumped 16 percentage points, which is the biggest improvement out of any mode that we measured in the survey. We think that's a direct result of the reliability improvements, faster rail speeds, safer experience on Metro rail, and just all around better experience on Metro rail. Riders seem to have noticed, and they came back, and they came back in droves. But meanwhile, the drive alone satisfaction, the very last item on that graph there, has declined since the pandemic. So as congestion has returned with the pandemic recovery, we're seeing that the experience of driving to work has gotten measurably worse. And in fact, I believe it's the only one that has gotten worse substantially. The bike and walking and scooter has also shown a little bit of a decline. However, its numbers are so high to begin with that it's marginal at best. So this gap, the transit getting better and the driving getting worse, is an opportunity I think that we can press into as a region and as professionals in this space who want to see that trend, or at least the transit satisfaction trend, continue to grow and also mitigate congestion. So we're going to take another quick break for a pulse check on what I've shared so far. These findings, what commuters care about, the different breakdowns in transit and drive alone rates, to what they're doing in the post-pandemic. Are these consistent with what you've seen in your jurisdictions, or are commuters voicing any concerns or complaints about traffic increasing, for example? If so, are there any strategies that you've deployed to try and combat that?
Because you don't mention that there, Metro Rail is the satisfaction with Metro performance. In my jurisdiction, Arlington County, 60% of bus service is actually delivered by Vermont, and 40% is our own. So we have two types of the signal there. Two messages. One is that Metro is far better. It works. Metro Rail is far better. It works. It's very reliable. People use it a lot. And so the increase in satisfaction completely corroborates that. People are quite not concerned, but they see bus service as a very essential part of this. And this came especially after the Better Bus Network was implemented, because people saw the improvement. So they now say, oh, we could have a better system here. What about that? And in Northern Virginia, as most of you know, we talk a lot about bus rapid transit. So we are actually very active in deep investment in that. So this is what I would like to know, whether, Metro Bus is also experiencing an increase in satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a great question. And the timing of the survey is such that it happened right around that transition time for a Better Bus in spring of last year. I think it happened right before it. So that's something that we're interested in kind of keeping tabs on as we do future surveys, to better understand how has that investment and bus transit services throughout the region from WMATA impacted commuters' ability to either get to transit nodes, as a lot of those buses go to rail lines, for example, or to get directly to their destination. Are times being cut? Is service reliable based on those changes? So we're interested in that as well.
Mr. Snyder had a question.
So I note from the survey, the slide up, that commuters, of the choices up there, commuters driving alone are least satisfied. And I also note that you talked about what positives or reasons why commuters choose alternatives to driving. Why do commuters choose to drive alone if they are the least satisfied? What reasons did they give? Because that can instruct us as to what we should be doing as a region to making alternatives more attractive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great observation. I'm going to make a note and try and connect those dots a little bit better. But I think, just based on memory and from what I've seen in the survey, there has been increased congestion on the road since the pandemic, which means those who were driving in 2022, for example, when the driver alone satisfaction peaked, had less resistance on the roads. They were able to get to where they need to go quicker when they're commuting. Now there are additional cars on the road that are making life a little more difficult for people on the road. So there's more congestion, greater delays. If you're in an area where there are tolls, for example, the tolls might be higher due to the induced demand on the roadways. So it's also interesting to think about access to these alternatives as well. Our drive alones drive alone commuters unsatisfied because they don't really have another viable option that they can choose that gets them there faster. Or they resort to driving alone because it's the only option that works for them and they can't find a better one. Just speculating.
Yeah, just to follow up, did you ask the people driving alone why they're driving alone and what can we do to provide alternatives? Is it access? Is it that we need to expand our transit opportunities, or is it something else that we can effectively address?
Yeah, I think we did ask that. I'll have to go back and look at the exact results and I can get back to you. So thank you, Mr. Snyder. I'll make sure I get back to you on that.
Mr. Jefferson?
So I just want to actually follow up on that because unfortunately, I was a drive alone for quite some time when I was commuting to DC. It is because there wasn't any other viable transit options. I'm a single mom. So if I had to go home, I had to go home quickly. And I was working on Capitol Hill, so I did not work standard hours. And something like OmniRide, which is what I typically take when I get into DC, wasn't a viable option. And that's one thing we have to keep in mind is in places like Prince William County, we're the outer suburbs. We don't have metro access. And again, we do have OmniRide, but that is a commuter bus, and VRE is commuter as well. So if you're working off hours and you have to get into DC or longer hours, non-traditional hours, and again, it's that flexibility that a lot of people need for family or other reasons.
Mhm.
Thank you. One other thought is I've been getting a lot of emails from constituents that they want a long haul express bus from Loudoun to Constitutional Avenue. And the reason why is because, you know, like the IRS, everybody's coming back to the office now. And, you know, I think this would avoid the drive alone if we offered an express bus. So we're looking into that. You doing that? Yeah, it's a way to get people off of, you know, driving alone. And I know Metro, we're pushing Metro. I know we are doing that, but sometimes people find the convenience of a bus better, especially if it's an express. So we're looking into it. Congressman Subramanian reached out to my office and asked for that as well. So there is a high demand for that.
Mhm.
I was going to piggyback off my colleague. I'm on NBTA, and we've been talking a lot about bus rapid transit, BRT. And one of the things a lot of our, at least in Northern Virginia, a lot of the member jurisdictions do is to make sure that we're better integrating that into our comprehensive plans. Now, again, Prince William County is very different than like in Arlington or Alexandria, which has the density, and it's easy to create those types of routes. So that's another thing. And also getting people to use, and I think there's been studies, getting people to use public transportation, it takes time when you're having to change your commuting patterns. Now, I went to college and I lived in New York City for a very long time, so I'm used to commuting. I'm very familiar with public transportation, but I can tell you, and again, a jurisdiction like mine, getting people to think outside of using their car, that takes time. And again, I have a very different jurisdiction than Falls Church.
Those are really excellent comments, and I'll provide a few thoughts on those if that's okay. I do admire the commuter bus services from the outer jurisdictions coming into DC. Actually a stop right out here in front that Loudoun County, at least at one point, used to stop in, and some colleagues would take that bus, and it's a very effective way to get to the core, the direct route without having to stop in between. Take the express lanes in. That's a great use of the infrastructure that exists in Northern Virginia to be able to just drive right in and get downtown without much of an issue. So seeing investment in commuter buses is encouraging. The fact that there's some conversations going on there. That was one of the modes that really got hit hard during the pandemic, because whenever you have zero ridership or close to zero ridership on a commuter bus that's teleworking, it's hard to justify that investment during that time. So we have seen more conversations like that start to spring up. I know Maryland's looking at it as well as an option, and sounds like Loudoun County. So yes.
Just to add, one of the aspects to DMV moves was looking at passenger rail, and we talked about this at the retreat last summer. When you look at the You look at other metro regions in the country that are our size, or even some that are significantly smaller, and you look at the number of folks that take passenger rail, the numbers are much higher. And one of the opportunities we have with the rebuilding of Long Bridge exponentially increase the number, and I'm looking at the chair of VRE right across from me, the new chair, the number of VRE and MARC offerings that are not only going and stopping at Union Station, but could cross the river and go from MARC into Northern Virginia and VRE into suburban Maryland. Particularly the acquisition of some of these rail lines and the Manassas spur will allow VRE or MARC trains to turn around. And one of the things that we talked about with our facilitator of DMV moves, hoping that he might be in a position to effectuate this, which now he's the secretary, is to work with his counterpart in Maryland now on the planning for that. Because I think the worst thing that could happen is we spend $5 billion on rebuilding Long Bridge, and VRE and MARC have not teamed up to figure this out. But when that bridge is open, we have an ability to really expand passenger rail to some of the outer counties that don't sit in the metro footprint.
Mr. Chairman. I'll take the punt. Thank you
Yeah,
very
go.
much. I'll take the punt in that. And to what Clark is saying is absolutely true. And so the understanding the accessibility and how to increase ridership on that behalf, and not just making it all work, metro, passenger rail, as well as the bus riding since COVID is an opportunity for us. And so just incorporating that to make sure that it's cost effective, but most of all, you know, in a world of change right now, how does that work when we talk about telework? How does that work when we talk about the non-traditional ways of bringing this economy back to where we need it to be? And so that's an opportunity, and the focus should be there. It is a change, but I think in order to get ahead of the game in terms of that, the DMV moves piece is critical. It's critical. And so whatever data we can create by having pilots in that regard is critical. And that is indeed where, as the VRE chair and my board, our focus is from a regional perspective. Thanks for taking that note.
No, it's a fantastic observation. Thank you. And are we good to take another question, I think?
Any further questions? Yeah.
Just one.
Just one quick comment and question about the survey. Anecdotally, I've heard a lot of my constituents will say that they don't use alternatives because it's not worth it for 2 days a week. It's unpredictable. Perhaps they get telework 2 or 3 days a week. And then it's not worth figuring out the transit. It's not worth trying to set up a carpool. Is there any evidence to support that in a broader, sense other than just kind of what I've heard? Because if there is, there may be some opportunity to expand on understanding how to quickly and easily configure a multimodal pattern for commuting for each individual. I take the train on these days as opposed to I drive, but a lot of people say, it's just not worth it. I'll just drive. And then they're, as we see here, dissatisfied because they're not at all pleased. And everybody has been noticing that the driving is much worse.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, there is some evidence there. What we've seen is as people come out of the pandemic, if they're called back to the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week, there's less of a motivator there to make a switch for those 1 or 2 days. There's a couple reasons that play into that. Let's say, for example, they work here in DC where you buy a monthly parking pass, right? That's almost a sunk cost in a way. Like you've already invested in driving for that month, so why would you bother not driving in that situation? So that's some examples that we hear from individuals. Where we start to see it change a little bit more is whenever you get into the 3 or 4 days a week of commuting to the office or the workplace. At that point in time, it becomes, well, the cost of commuting starting to rise, and especially now with gas prices rising, we've seen a huge influx of people starting to question whether or not that's a sustainable method for them to get to and from the office, because it hasn't quite doubled yet, but it's a strain on certain populations' financial situations to try and afford commuting at this point in time if they're driving alone. So hitting those, I guess those points of change in someone's life. So whether you're relocating from outside the region, you've got a changing job, you are becoming more financially stretched with the price of gas. That's when we find that commuters are more interested in, more apt, I guess, to change their habits. Otherwise, habits get formed and they continue kind of in perpetuity until some big inflection point happens that motivates them to try and change.
Why don't you share with them the increase that you've seen in commuter connections with corresponding with the rise in gas prices? Numbers are pretty.
Yeah, for sure. I've got it later on, but we're on a good topic now. So what's really interesting that we've seen in the last 45 days is a huge jump when you compare it to last year. And remember, last year was RTO, so that was a huge jump in and of its own. But for example, we had 100,000 website page views on our commuter connection service last year. That jumped to 180,000 last year in the 45-day period that I was looking at, around March and late February, early April. Same thing with our registrations. They jumped quite a bit. I mean, if you go all the way back to 2024, when things were kind of stagnant, if you will, about 600 new registrants for our program in that time frame, jumped up to, I believe I listed 3,100 or so last year, and we're still up at 2,800 and 2,900 it jumped up to this year. So there's a lot of interest out there right now. I think people are really feeling the squeeze with the cost of commuting, more so even than when they took the survey. I do wonder if we were to do this right now with that saving money metric for, what drives a decision in commuting would supersede avoiding stress at this point. You think about it, gas prices are relatively stable for a number of years, but they really just took off here in the past month or so, which is now a driving force from what we can tell in people choosing how to get to and from work.
But this will be the last question, Ms. Orianda, and then we'll complete.
Thank you. And I apologize, you might have gone over this in your presentation because I showed up a little late. But in our district, one of the things that's interesting is we're starting to see a lot of development specifically at our metro stations, which is great. But also the project specifically with WMATA is taking away the parking lots, right? So we're building up vertically and we'll be losing a lot of those parking spaces. So I'm just wondering around trends as you see that commuter option where people would want to drive, leave their car. The trade-off is that people that live in those buildings, obviously will be easier for them to take the metro, but do you see that being like a hindrance as we look at developing our metro stations in that way?
I don't see it as much of a hindrance as it is a different population potentially taking metro. What we see at the park and rides is people in lower cost housing being able to come into the core, leave their car and take metro. Whereas if you've developed around the metro stations, you're likely going to see, or at least hopefully see people who are living there. Maybe cost of housing is a little bit higher, but they'll have access to metro stations as well. I do have a slide in here. If we have time, I can talk about how, the income levels of people in this region, people of all income levels take metro, which is really interesting. It's not the case in other metros, but here in the DC area, there seems to be uniform acceptance of metro being, especially metro rail, being a great way to get to work from these survey results. So if anything, I would say it's most likely a different population that might be accessing the service at that with that investment.
Thank you.
Do we have time to continue, or do I?
Yeah, and go ahead and continue, and then if we have a few minutes, we can follow up.
If you've got a couple more minutes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll try and fly through these next few observations. So what's interesting about the survey too is that we can kind of dive into more than just how you got to and from work, but make some inferences about the decisions people make and what influences those decisions, or other trends. Like here, I want to talk about travel distances and travel times. It's a bit of a quieter finding, but it really helps us understand what didn't change, and that was travel distance. So there was speculation, at least during the pandemic, how long is this going to last? Are we going to lose all of our workers? Are they going to migrate outside the region and not, generate tax revenue for the localities that they live in and have these super commutes the one day a week they do commute into the office and telework the rest of the days? It doesn't seem like that's happened based on this survey. You can see the distances are quite consistent throughout all 3 survey years. But what has changed, and we talked about this, is the commute time. So as roads got less congested during the pandemic, of course, those times went down. As they got more congested, the times are going back up again. So we kind of talked about this in the last question, but transit access fuels economic opportunity. That's something we've seen from the survey. When we look at this chart, we see that transit use is remarkably consistent across all income levels in the region. Workers in households earning less than $60,000 a year and workers in households earning more than $200,000 a year use transit at relatively the same rate. This tells us that transit is not a specialized service for a narrow slice of the population in this region, but it is a very critical tool that connects workers at every level to their jobs. So when transit works well, employers can draw from a larger, diverse labor pool because we do have such a robust network spread throughout the region. And this region as a whole becomes more competitive and more attractive to businesses, resilient to these economic disruptions that we're currently experiencing, including the high gas prices we see today. And then when transit doesn't work, so on the other side of the coin, if it's unreliable, infrequent, or inaccessible, those connections all then break down, as you all are well aware, which would cause disinvestment potentially throughout the region, businesses to relocate elsewhere away from transit and disrupt our economic resiliency. I think this is the last finding. Yeah, so last finding, then I'll wrap things up. I do want to discuss a little bit, because it did get brought up earlier, about the awareness of what is available to commuters throughout our region, some of the support services that we do have to complement those who might need to get home to take someone to daycare, for example, or pick up a sick child from school. We've seen that that's a deterrent for people who might otherwise be interested in taking transit. So there are commuter assistance programs out there that we try and advertise, Commuter Connections being one of them. But every county in our region, and including DC and the city of Alexandria, have commuter assistance programs that offer guaranteed ride home services that we operate here at COG to get people home in the case of an emergency if they take transit, carpool, vanpool, or bike to work. We help people find rideshare partners. We actually, if you can believe it, pay incentives to people who choose to leave their keys at home and take transit instead, or find someone to ride in HOV lanes with. So it is in our interest to try and expand these options to let people know there are safety nets and incentives to changing your commute up if you're driving alone, and potentially even find one that gives you more satisfaction, since drive alone is one of the lower commute modes, or the lowest commute mode when it comes to overall satisfaction. So that is what we hope to do at Commuter Connections, is to continue to decrease this awareness gap, and the metrics I shared earlier about our increase in numbers, I think, is starting to show that. Some key takeaways from this whole presentation: transit, we believe, is getting better, and it's worth saying so to constituents and those that commute to and from work. So satisfaction is up. Metro Rail is reliable. For constituents who have gave up on transit during the pandemic, it's a great opportunity then to say, hey, this is a great service. You can come when you come back to work. We encourage you to take transit. Second, hybrid work is here to stay, and our region is adapting to that. So when commuters ask why traffic feels different, which we know it does, especially on the peak days of Tuesday and Wednesday, even Thursday is up there as well. The answer is that we have more people on the roads on those days and more people teleworking Fridays and Mondays. Third, the last item here is that I think it's worth noting free help is available to commuters who do want those options, which we just talked about on that last slide. And I do encourage, if there are opportunities to help spread the word about Commuter Connections and our services, please don't hesitate to reach out. We do have a great Office of Communications team here. We have marketers in-house at Commuter Connections as well, communications experts who can help your constituents understand what is out there and available to them to help improve their commute. If you're interested in more about the state of the commute and the data we have, I have a few helpful links here. We've published it all. It's in a dashboard. We've given the local data packages to our network members in every jurisdiction as part of the survey. So they've got custom packages relevant to commuters who are originating in their counties and cities. Plenty of support products as well that are available online at that website. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, so I see at least 2, 3, see 4 questions. The hope was to be completed by 12:50, but we're going to get started with Ms. Ashton, and we'll go with Ms. Bailey, Stewart, Wolfley, and Cersei.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. I'll be very quick and to the point. There was one slide you put up there that looked at income changes, income differences. And what really stood out to me is that the below $99,000 income range had the lowest metro usage. Do you have any more information about that? Because that's who we want to help the most. And I'm just wondering, is it the cost of metro? There are some jurisdictions that have flat base, so that's one thing. Or is it that people are living further out? And maybe the times and the mixture of bus to transit. I know in some places the bus network ends early. So I'm just that is I think that we should really understand that income level because we need to help them the most. And I didn't want to gloss over that. Just wanted to see if you have more to say.
Right. No, that's an excellent observation. Thank you. And that's something that's very interesting. We'll have to do a deeper dive in the survey. We don't have that finding right in the report. We've got 150 pages of findings, but I don't recall that one in there. So we can take a deeper look into that. My speculation, based on other studies I've seen, not just in DC but around the country, is that typically housing costs are higher near transit. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It's one of those unfortunate things where as more people want to live next to it, of course, it drives up the cost of housing. So that means people further out where it's harder to have reliable service to get to those core stations. It's more difficult to reach them and to get them to the core nodes of transit that connect you to Metro Rail, for example.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. 2 things real quick. I would be remiss if I didn't entertain the opportunity to invite you to our VRE board meeting. So I'm just putting it out there. I'll circle back with you. And then the other thing is, what is ride matching? Please explain that to me. I'm not.
For sure. Yeah, so you may have heard it called rideshare as well, but we've gotten away from that term because Uber and Lyft have kind of commandeered it. So ride matching is more so carpooling. So we have a database of, you're good? Okay.
Yeah, good.
Cool. Thank you. And we appreciate the invite too.
I think my question might be related to Mayor Ashton's question. So when we say transit, is that rail and bus?
Yes.
Combined? And so I think it would be helpful to look at economic breakouts by bus and rail, because I know in Montgomery County, there is a difference in terms of who is riding our buses and who is riding the rail. And I think that will help aid what Mayor Ashton is also looking at.
Yes, I think we see that too. There's a transit dependent population and a transit by choice population, and they are different in how they use transit.
Yes, thank you.
Quick question. Is there was there a question or was there a methodology to determine if the total number of commuters has grown for this area in terms of total number of commutes taken, per, or I guess it would be number of people and total commute, not count?
I don't think so. I think we look at what the commuters shared in the survey results, so we don't look at the holistic picture. But I do kind of, I'm looking at country, the regional travel survey might get into that, which Clark mentioned in his remarks. That's a more comprehensive analysis of travel demand in the region. So our department's working on collecting that data now, actually.
All right. So what we have through all of this is change in size of the change in the percentage of the pie, but not the size of the pie dimension changing.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm going to pick up where Mayor Ashton and Councilmember Stewart left off in terms of the difference between rail and bus income levels, but also is there a way to do a bit of a crosstab between income and various incentives, or the likelihood of being able to have different transit incentive options by income? Because a lot of like federal employees and other employers are more likely to offer transit subsidies, which will incentivize you to take metro rail or bus. But if you are lower income individual, not likely to get those types of incentives from your employer, which leads to you being more likely to take the bus and not the rail because it's quite pricey. So it would be interesting to see if there's a crosstab that you all may be able to do to kind of look at how effective some of these incentive programs are at reaching some of the lower income transit users within the region.
Great suggestion, thank you. And these suggestions are one of the reasons why we like to do this this road show, if you will, the State of the Commute, because we'll be taking a deeper dive later in the year as we compile all these questions and look to maybe have a follow-up at some point. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. I will piggyback on Mayor Ashton, Councilman Stewart, and my lovely colleague in Montgomery County, Mayor Cece. For us in Prince George's County, specifically in College Park, I would like to see that differentiation of the tabulation between Metro and the actual rider access, because as we talk about affordability and housing and the economic piece of that, we also have students that we are trying to relate to and to get them to be able to come to and from the city. So that will help us as we look at our strategic plan within the next 5 years. How do we incorporate some resources and incentives for them to make it a much more walkable, livable community? So it will help us greatly. Thank you.
So are we good? Okay, all right. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Sheehan, for that outstanding response. So in case you haven't heard, America is about to celebrate its 250th anniversary. And so for our next item, we're joined by a panel of speakers to learn about upcoming plans in DC, Maryland, and Virginia to commemorate the 250th anniversary of our country. We'll be hearing from Delegate Gretchen Bulova, VA 250 Commission member, Michelle Johnson, Maryland 250 Commission Director, and Lindsay Apia, District of Columbia Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice. We'll also hear from COG Homeland Security and Public Safety Managing Director Scott Boggs on how COG is providing support through public safety coordination. We'll start with Mr. Boggs. Start with, okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much to the COG for having me. I'm Lindsay Apia. I'm the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice for the district. And I'm going to talk about the district's planning and coordination for primarily the national events that are celebrating America's 250th. You've likely heard of some of these, but when I talk about the national events, there are a number of signature events that are national, federal, we'll get into them. And all but I believe 2 of them are happening either here in the district or the Memorial Day celebration in Arlington. So we anticipate a lot of activity here in the District of Columbia in the region. And so we want to talk about the extensive amount of planning and work that has gone into getting us prepared thus far, and that will be continuing for what is a very unique period in the district. And so I'm looking at Tomas. We'll talk about the role Tomas plays, which is a big one. And of course, my boss, the city administrator, who always can jump in and add anything that he wants. Okay, so a little bit of an overview. What you'll see, you can go to the next slide, is we have something in the district called the Readiness Roadmap, where, these events, DC pulls off large events all the time, but it's always happening in the context of a lot of other things. We are the federal city. There's no question about that. We're the nation's capital, and we're proud to host the world, but we are a local city as well. And so at the same time as all of these national events are going on, we have things at the wharf. We have DCPS spring break. We have all of these activities that require our agencies to respond and to be coordinated. And so you'll see a little bit of that because we can't talk about what's happening with 250 without talking a little bit contextually about the activities, the large scale you'll see, and the impact on the region, really. And then just before I kind of get into that, I mentioned Tomas, a lot of this activity is coordinated through something called the Mayor Special Events Task Group, which is responsible for providing the interagency review, assessment of all of the operational, public safety, and logistical components of proposals for special events in the district. And when we say special events, that means really events that will have impact on either the district's roads, how people are moving about the city, the public space. And so that group consists of, I mean, it's a lot of agencies, local, a lot of our licensing agencies, public safety agencies, our infrastructure and transportation agencies, federal entities from Department of Homeland Security, Park Police, all of the federal law enforcement, the National Guard, our utility partners like DC Water, and others. So it's a very robust group that reviews all of these requests that come into the city to determine how is this feasible to help event organizers put together a plan that is safe? Safety is our number one priority, and that mitigates as much impact. I pointed to Councilmember Allen because he'll feel his constituents often feel a lot of impacts of things that happen in Ward 6. So are we mitigating impact to residents? And this event certainly has required an intricate dance. And so then we'll go into the event overview of the actual 250 events, just a little bit of a flavor, and then the regional coordination, because in order to pull this off, it takes more than the district, more than the Fed. It's working with all of you all. So I'm not going to go into too much on our readiness roadmap. You can go the next, but we are in April, and what we wanted you to be able to see is a little bit of the landscape of the large scale activities that really start to kick in May. And so what you're seeing here is these are the Mayor's Special Events Task Group licensed events. And so there are other things happening here, but it's everything from large 5Ks to large expos that are happening in the area, which we know that when they happen in the district, you all feel the impacts of people driving in, taking transit in your hotels. And so just wanting you to have an awareness. The ones that are in the red, those are the Freedom 250, America 250. It's called all sorts of things, but signature large scale events. And the first one happens May 17th. Some of these boxes are large because without going into too much, there's build outs, they're very, very complex events to execute over the course of days. And so the two Freedom 250 events that are in May are the prayer, rededicate 250, and then the Memorial Day observance. But there's other things, there's Rolling Thunder, there's concerts like Project Glow at the RFK campus. And then across the bottom, you'll see we have all of our sporting activities from the Defenders to the W, which is the Wharf, to the Caps and the Nats and everything going on. And so we know there's going to be a lot of movement of people and beginning in May. And when you go to June, you see things just really pick up pace in June. Even more activities going on. You have a number of Freedom 250 events, from the archive celebration to the Freedom 250 MMA fight, which you've likely heard about, to FIFA Fan Fest, which is a long activity and activation that'll be happening while FIFA's going on. DC is a Fan Fest site, to the Great American State Fair, which is a very unique activity that'll be on the mall that is much like each state will have a booth. It truly is like a state fair all across there. So he's saying, hey, these are fun. people have lots of feelings, but we know that a lot of people will be coming to the region because of it, and that there is a lot of excitement for us. I think we embrace that in the district, the excitement, the like trepidation, the all of those things. And so lots of activities going on in June, um, all across the district. And then July, it looks less, but it is not really less because obviously there's the 4th of July, which is an extra special 4th of July this year. We'll talk about in a minute, other things happening. And then finally, August, a couple of activities, but the big one, it looks small on here. And maybe, I don't know, to me, maybe one of the most unique things we'll have to pull off, but we will, is the American 250 Grand Prix or the Freedom 250 Grand Prix, which is the IndyCar race, which will be, you can't tell it by his face, but the CA is very excited about this one. He actually is. So he will be there, like, you know. So, so that's like a quick overview, but we want you to see this because as we're doing our planning, all of these different entities that we talked about, in order to do any one of these events, right? Like it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of intergovernmental, interagency coordination. Doing all of these events, what makes I think this most unique is that it's very extended periods of time. Like usually we have an inauguration and we're done. And we've pulled off months. We always go back to 2025, which is a year where we did, multiple national special security events in a month, which is extremely unusual, and we do it. But this is very extended and intricate. There is a lot of build outs and unique elements that we haven't quite seen in the district before. And so the planning has been extensive over many months to ensure that we're able to do this safely. And the biggest thing too is we are not obtuse, and we recognize that we're doing all of this in the backdrop of some unique, like geopolitical things. We are the nation's capital, and we can't be kind of ignorant of the fact that I'm the deputy mayor for public safety and justice. Last year, we had two, what we would say were terrorist type events in the district. We had the shooting of our Israeli embassy workers, or the murder of our Israeli embassy workers. We had the shooting of our National Guardsmen. And so we are hyper aware of the need to, while all of this goes on, that we are America, that we are the nation's capital, that we need to continue to have activity. We also need to be mindful of the environment in which we're operating. And so that has certainly heightened our planning and our awareness and our coordination with a host of federal partners. And so if you go to the next slide, these are the Freedom 250 events and like positioned where they are. As you can see, much of the activity obviously is centered around the mall, which is going to be a hotbed of activity. Now, in some respects, for the residents of the district, that means that we, again, try to mitigate as much kind of disruption to life as possible. But all of this means usually traffic impacts, road closures, the way people are moving about the city will be like a complex dance for a long period of time. The dates for the Freedom of 50 events are here, and some of them are extended. We didn't put here too much detail. We can certainly provide some of that because we know that an event that starts on the 17th doesn't really start on the 17th. There are periods of time where there's going to be build out and where there will be road closures and alterations and movement to facilitate that. And those are, again, what I said, probably one of the more unique aspects of this is the extended period of time, basically out like, quite frankly, from May 1st all the way through September. There are some other events happening down that way, but the bulk of the activities in there. What you're seeing here is, so these are the events around the mall, and interspersed with some of these things are graduations and that happen on the mall and kind of the regular rhythm of DC life. And so Tomas and me and are working closely with all of the entities to make sure that we're able to accommodate all of these. One of the important things I mentioned, security is the number one, like safety and security is the number one. And we look at that holistically, right? Like it's just as important to us that DC Health is a part of this because we get a lot of 911 calls when we have visitors to the mall for things like heat stroke and otherwise. So some of the work that we've done where we really piloted some things during inauguration, like geofencing 911 calls, like isolating certain units, doing mutual aid with some of your jurisdictions on things like 911 calls, on policing, all of those type of requests, which you truly are our partners in providing support. We've learned a lot with that, but these are extensive parts of our planning. Like if we put more tents on the mall of medical tents, we tend to have less 911 calls for resources in other parts of the city. And so that is as much a part of our planning as anything. But the designations, the threat assessments, it's been very important for us to work with the Department of Homeland Security to really assess like what is the level of threat or risk in our planning. And so several of these events have received SEER ratings, which is a special event assessment rating, goes from SEER 1 to SEER 5. SEER 1 being the highest, meaning it's a significant national or event of national or international interest that requires significant federal interagency coordination, and several of those are, for security reasons, not going to say what level they are, but several of them you can see have an S because in our work with DHS, they have assessed that there's a need for that level of security and risk of terrorism, and I'll just say it, and those type of activities. And so that really informs our security posture and the types of resources that we bring in, the requests we make of the National Guard, like all of those things, which we have done. And then right now, one is designated an NSSC 4th of July, which is not always designated a national special security event. We do it every year, and so usually it's not, but this year it is. And it's the efforts by the organizers is to have it be the largest fireworks display in the 250 year history of America. And they are working with all jurisdictions, Maryland, Virginia, and the district to make that happen. So a lot with that. But with an NSSC, the primary federal organizing agency becomes the Secret Service. And so they kind of take the lead on what the security footprint will look like. And so we work closely with them. On the others, the district, to be honest with you, takes the lead, really takes the lead in coordinating everything, even if it's a SEER rating. But what sort of resources we get from the federal government is affected by that. And so we will continue to assess these and work with DHS if we feel like we need to request more federal assistance or otherwise. And quite frankly, Tomas and myself and the city administrator work closely with the White House and others to make sure that all of the resources that are needed for the region really for these, and you'll hear from Scott, like the resources that are needed to really address the threats and also the kind of the resource utilization needs are really being met, because a lot of this is because we are the federal city. So that is kind of a quick overview on the regional coordination, and then I'll turn to my peers here from Maryland and Virginia. So some of the things coming up, because it's always like we'll make an ask of you all. Like we're shamelessly asking for support. Is a big one that that's I know talked about a lot in HSEC and others, interoperability. Like we got to be able to coordinate, communicate, see if our systems work together. And so there's a lot of work on that. There'll be a meeting April 24th hosted by our SWIC, Charlie Gademi, and so many of your jurisdictions will be invited. That's specifically state. It's the state interoperability. I don't know what the W is. What is state interoperability coordinator? What is the W, Scott? Statewide, right. Interoperability coordinator. On interoperability, do our radios work? Do we have communication gaps? And so you'll see invites to that, to many of your jurisdictions. A big one is intelligence, information sharing, and situational awareness. We know that many of our fusion centers are connected, but a big piece of this we mentioned is transportation and traffic and moving people through the region. And so we'll make requests around communication and then doing coordinated threat assessments, which has most to do with our work with DHS and with our fusion centers. There's a lot of operational coordination that is going on at each of these different lines of effort, but We always make requests, and that is likely going to be the case between police chiefs for mutual aid for many of these events because we, I mean, we have the officers we have, we will use all of them. They will, you know, we will run hot with overtime, but which the CA loves. He loves that. But favorite. It was just but we do need help, so we will like as always make requests for mutual aid. Our fire chiefs, the emergency managers are meeting, and 911 directors, which is a new not that the 911 directors are new, but making requests for dispatchers and 911 call takers, particularly because, like I said, we started doing this in inauguration last year, but this is really long and a lot of large activity. So it will take all of the district, but we also are responsible for the rest of the city, which is important so that we can't have all of our resources down on the mall. But and there'll be activations of our different emergency operations centers, which many folks come to when they're open. So the Emergency Operations Center, the Fire Operations Center, and then our Law Enforcement Joint Operational Coordination Center. And then lastly is public information. We'll lean on people to help get the word out about movement. We'll set up all AWIAs and alerts and all of those things that we always do, Joint Information Center activations, and pointing people to websites. So that's a really fast summary of work that is happening over many months to pull up a very complicated thing. And as much as that's the case, it's an honor, right? It's 250 years of America, and however we feel or don't feel, to be the nation's capital and the national capital region to host the world, which we will and do all the time, is an honor. Even at the most complex time, potentially in our 250, we've had many complex times in 250 years, but certainly in a long time, it's one of the more complex periods, but we're going to do this and we're going to do it well. And we're going to showcase the National Capital Region as the, you know, we call it the shining, like the crown jewel of this thing that's called the United States. So that is what we're doing and what we're working on, and appreciate all of your support as we do this thing. So. Oh, you had the clicker.
No, it was right there.
Oh,
I just
thank you.
it wasn't me who clicked. Somebody back there clicked, I think. Hi, everybody. Michelle Johnson, Director of the Maryland 250 Commission, as if that was not obvious. And I just want to share, I started my planning career at the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. There's no one at this table who was here in those days or over there, but I understand my last colleagues retired recently. So anyway, in Maryland, it is a whole different ballgame, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. My number one job is to work the state of Maryland and the people and communities into a frenzy about the semi-quincentennial. And I just want to make sure everyone knows this word and knows how to say it. All right, repeat after me. Semi-quincentennial. Put it together, semi-quincentennial. So though this is a national commemoration, there is state and local execution. And in Maryland, we are guided by our own unique executive order that was signed by our governor, Wes Moore. Our executive order is focused on an inclusive and nonpartisan statewide commemoration. Our three themes are history, civics, and service. We're charged with engaging all Marylanders and focusing on what we aspire to be as a state in the future. You may see some familiar faces among our 34 commissioners. Our chair is former Governor Paris Glendening. Our vice chair is former First Lady and retired Judge Katie O'Malley. Our Lieutenant Governor, Rona Miller, sits on the commission, as does General Janine Burkhead, the leader of the Maryland Military Department. Oh, and we have a staff. I leave a staff of 5. I'm the only one older than 28. So our work is, and okay, and I'll just say this: the every state is different, and some states have a lot of money for the 250th. Some states have no money. Texas is, you know, it's in their executive order; they cannot spend a dime on the 250th. We're in the middle. I mean, closer to the low end, but we do have some money. And what we've done is we've focused our 250th in Maryland on building a coalition of local 250 commissions all around the state. And it's taken a while to get there, but I'm really pleased with where we are. We had 4 small grants programs. They have all sunset now. And I'll tell you a little bit about them in a moment. And then we offer technical informational support and any kind of support needed to our stakeholders around the state. We have 2 legacy programs. They were both grant programs. One is called Citizen Academies. And if I had it to name again, I probably would name it something else. But this was named 3 years ago. And this is for local communities around the state for town halls, county office buildings to open their doors, invite in their residents to learn how their local government works and to meet their elected and their staff officials. And we awarded almost 30 of those grants. And City of Laurel, Mr. Sidner, you were one of our grantees for Citizen Academy. And so anyway, we are hoping that this will be a legacy of the commission. And the end goal is citizen engagement. And President Collins, your county, a grant is being processed for your county now. We just need your signature on it. And so anyway, but that's not for Citizen Academy. That's for once in a generation. So the other legacy program is Maryland 250 Fellows, and interns must be paid. And the commission believes that. And I, as the director, I believe it also. And Maryland 250 Fellows, we funded 51 interns in either historical societies, small museums, and cultural centers all around the state. And we are looking to raise $3 million as a legacy of this commission to spin off $150,000 a year to continue this program. Our press has never been more important, and we have a Freedom of the Press project that right now there's a traveling exhibit. I think it's in Cambridge, and I cannot remember where else it is right now. It's in 2 places in Maryland. It is going to end with a community conversation with journalist Terry Moran. Revolutionary Baseball. This is a partnership with the minor league baseball teams. And if you don't know, there's 6 in the state of Maryland, and we are just so excited to have this partnership with the minor league teams. Our video, which I hope you all had a chance to see, I know it was sent out in advance of this meeting. Our video shows every night. It started August 1st of last season. It will show every night at every home game at all 6 of the ballparks through July 5th. Civics Moonshot. And this has never been more important. We are going to have a civic challenge, an essay contest, and field trips around Maryland, all related to the themes of the commission. We were in the early stages of planning this fall a statewide celebration of service, and we are, if you don't know, the first state in the nation to have a Department of Service and civic innovation. And finally, we're readying Maryland for future commemorations. And if you don't know, 2027 is the bicentennial of American railroading, and it all began in the state of Maryland. And then in 2034, it's Maryland's 400th birthday. So that part of our legacy is helping the state be ready for those 2 commemorations. A few key partner events and programs that are happening: Sail 250 Maryland and Air Show Baltimore. That is going to be huge. And they're expecting 200,000 people to come to Baltimore to see the tall ships. And this is the only Sail 250 of all the, I think there's 5 or 6 cities around the country. This is the only one with an air show alongside of it. So we're very, very excited about that. The Maryland 400, they fought in the Battle of Brooklyn. And if you don't know, there is a Maryland monument in Brooklyn, New York. And so the commission will be going to Brooklyn on August 22nd. And any of you who want to join us, please let me know, and I'll tell you how you can sign up. But we're very excited about this 250th commemoration. There was a monument torn down on the grounds of the State House a while back. And there is a new monument going up on August 29th, 2026, honoring Black Revolutionary War patriots. We have a song, and I think we may be the only state that has a 250 song. And Jayla Elise grew up in Prince George's County. Her dad is actually a police officer in Prince George's County. And she now lives in Cambridge, and she wrote The Heart of Maryland for the 250th. And then she wrote a national song called America's Calling. 250 miles from Maryland is from the Department of Natural Resources, and that is a program to get Marylanders to walk or run in our state parks. And, you know, they're not looking for individuals to walk 250 miles themselves, although they could, but really it's a group kind of thing. To our great surprise, there was a Maryland 250 lottery game launched by the Maryland State Lottery. There's a Maryland Liberty Tree Project, and our state ethnic commissions are all planning various 250 celebrations. My biggest surprise in this role was the international partnerships. And you would have expected that at the national level, but because of the times we live in, they actually are interested in working with our state. And we've had some great partnerships. There was a Japan-Maryland Day at the Japanese ambassador's home. The French are doing a lot of things for the 250th. There was an event, a sister city event in Cambridge with Liberia, and there's, you know, historic ties between the state of Maryland and Liberia. There's actually a state in Liberia called Maryland and other states. Just a few things on the calendar. We've missed Maryland Day. That is in the past now. That was a couple weeks ago. Rebels and Redcoats. If Mr. Collins, you're not too far from St. Mary's County. And this weekend is Rebels and Redcoats in St. Mary's County. Talbot Day, and I happen to live in Talbot County on the Eastern Shore. In May, of course, the Preakness is huge. This year, it will be in Laurel instead of in Baltimore. And Prince George's 250 is having a big block party event at the very end of May. In June, there will be Juneteenth events all around the state. And we're going to have a Juneteenth page on our website. I hope you'll take a look at our website. Then we have Sail 250 Maryland the last week in June, July 4th events all around the state. There's 2 national programs, not through America 250, but actually from other states. America's Potluck is a national program from Utah, calling for communities to have a community meal on July 5th. And Sharing the Spirit of America is July 8th at 6 p.m. This is an initiative from Hawaii for a simultaneous nationwide reading of the Declaration of Independence. And in Maryland, we are encouraging Maryland foods and Maryland recipes in America's Potluck. And we're encouraging reading other inclusive documents alongside the Declaration of Independence. And we're encouraging communities to have a recommitment ceremony to recommit to what we aspire to be as a nation. August and September, we have the Maryland 400 Battle of Brooklyn, the new monument, the Maryland State Fair, Labor Day, Constitution Day, and then a number of things going on in November, ending with our Freedom of the Press conference. And that concludes my remarks, and thank you.
All right, memo to myself, Virginia needs a song. Thanks for that tip. I am Gretchen Bulova. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Virginia 250. I have been on the commission since it was formed, and I have the pleasure of representing historic Alexandria with the city of Alexandria. I also represent the Northern Virginia museums in this commission. So when the commission was founded, it was very important to us that it was a very inclusive commemoration. And our commemoration right from the beginning, despite many discussions from the museum professionals in the room, was that we were going to go all the way through the Battle of Yorktown. So we are in it for the long haul, 2031. We have a pretty fantastic and very diverse commission, and I listed some of the categories there. Carly Fiorina is our honorary chair. So she is this person who is going from event to event. She's doing a fantastic job and has really been a beacon for us during this commemoration. We also have a very robust honorary council, Tribal Nations Council, and African American Advisory Council. Some of the big initiatives that we're looking at in 2026, mind you, we've been doing this work for many years now, but our primary things I wanted to highlight is that we now have 2 mobile museums traveling throughout the Commonwealth with a mandate for every middle school child to visit this mobile museum. And so it is traveling to major events, but mostly to middle schools. We also have the 250th Passport, which even if you do not live in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I encourage you to take. And when you come into Northern Virginia, you can get a lot of these checked off with just, 10 miles away. But this has been a great program for us. We're in our 2nd printing, and it's distributed throughout the Commonwealth, mostly at visitor centers and some of the larger museums like Mount Vernon, Monticello, Colonial Williamsburg. So I encourage you to take a look at this. And with just a few stamps, you can turn it in for amazing prizes. Community storytelling is at the core of what most of the jurisdictions are doing throughout the Commonwealth. VA 250 is kind of leading that way with a special community storytelling app, and that information is on the va250.org website. We have had a large exhibit move. It's based on Give Me Liberty, Patrick Henry, move from the Virginia Museum in History and Culture, which is our state museum, to opens shortly in Yorktown at the Museum of the Revolution. So if you didn't have a chance to catch it in Richmond, there'll be another chance in Yorktown. And also, for those of you who happen to travel out of the Richmond airport on that rare occasion, there is a pop-up exhibit inside the airport, which is getting a lot of eyes on it. And then local jurisdictions like the city of Fairfax has this exhibit on a traveling loan from the State Museum. I know this happened in 2025 and you all saw Ken Burns' documentary, The American Revolutionary Series. We had a lot of watch parties and we are still riding this wave. So that has been a major initiative for a lot of our museums. So, and if you haven't had a chance to watch it, you can still catch it on PBS. So the kind of a big takeaway, the big activity of VA 250 is to amplify what all the jurisdictions in Virginia are doing with marketing initiatives, funding, and social media. The commission offered some amazing grant opportunities and rolled this out over 3 years in different waves. Virginia Humanities funding research, Virginia Tourism providing funds to the local CVBs, Department of Historic Resources providing funds for essentially shovel-ready museum projects. And so the local museum receiving funding from this was actually in Fairfax County. It's the Sully Historic Site, and they'll be opening a brand new exhibit in May. And then $5,000 was available to every jurisdiction through their arts councils. So that's pretty aggressive funding assortment. A lot of jurisdictions really benefited from this funding. And of course, what would be a commemoration without merch? We have lots of merchandise. I hope you will wear your Virginia 250 pin proudly. We also, kind of a fun thing, I know there's food and beverage is very much a part of most commemorations. So we have rolled out in Virginia wine, beer, and cider with the 250th logo. And a fun fact, Fairfax County is rolling out their Fairfax 250 wine in just a couple of weeks as well. So keeping it local here. We had 3 years of a common cause conference led by Colonial Williamsburg and the commission, where we welcomed partners through all the states as well as throughout the Commonwealth. And so that was an amazing celebration with a lot of good academic scholarship presented and marketing opportunities for our partners. So I have, if you had a chance to pick it up, just a list of our signature events coming up. Virginia, we're very blessed with founding fathers and great museums. There's a lot of amazing events that will take place between now. I think this only goes through this year, thankfully, not 2031. But some of these are listed for you. I just wanted to highlight We're having a conference in Colonial Williamsburg at the end of April, focusing on the Virginia tribes. We take this through Juneteenth. And then we too are part of Sail 250. The Sail 250 is going from New Orleans through Boston with 5 stops along the way. It is here with in Norfolk. So Sail Virginia, Sail, they have a different name. Sail Virginia 250 is the one in Norfolk. And then in Virginia, there's 10 affiliate ports, of which the closest to here is going to be Alexandria. So we'll put a little pin in that for a second. But this is a major initiative that they've been working on to bring 50 ships to go up the coast. So I'm glad that yours is partnered with an air show. That's very creative. And many of us will be going down to Norfolk for this celebration and also the Juneteenth celebration as well. Of course, in Virginia, it'll culminate where? Colonial Williamsburg, of course, right? So for the last 3 years, we had one at the Virginia State Capitol, we had Fort Monroe, and then this year will be at Colonial Williamsburg. And a new announcement is that PBS is going to broadcast live from Colonial Williamsburg, and they're encouraging jurisdictions to have watch parties so that the Falls Church, the Vienna, Fairfax, all the 250th committees can kind of share in this celebration in addition to its own. So since I am giving the presentation and I do run Alexandria 250, we'll talk just a second about our Sail 250 event. This is Sails on the Potomac. This does align with a major DC event I'm recognizing, having listened to the presentation. So, yes. So we are one of 10 Virginia affiliates. We have 3 tall ships coming under the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, which I'm sure you all get the alerts when the bridge opens between 12 and 4 a.m. We have 3 ships coming in from Philadelphia, Lewis, Delaware, and the Sultanas on the eastern shore of Maryland. And we also have our very own tall ship Providence. So we will have 4 ships, 4 tours, and we will have this as part of a huge 250th festival. So we will have live music, history booths, community activities for a 3-day extravaganza where we will have the second best, apparently, to DC's fireworks, the nation's fireworks, on Saturday, June 13th at 9:30. So this will be a major draw to the Northern Virginia region. This is the largest VA 250 sponsored event. And so there'll be a lot of eyes, a lot of people coming to visit this. We think this may be one of our largest events that we will have had in the city of Alexandria for a very long time. We launched our website just yesterday, and we are selling our free tickets quite vigorously. So so keep an eye. You'll start to see Sails on the Potomac, and we're hoping for perfect weather and a really wonderful turnout. So I just want to leave you with warm fuzzies about all the wonderful things that we are doing in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Again, this is meant to be a commemoration that's inclusive, that's Commonwealth-wide, and we're very proud of the work that we've been doing. Thanks.
So clearly a lot going on around the region, and like the deputy mayor mentioned, that we're probably multiple times a month briefing SME groups like the police chiefs, the fire chiefs, the emergency managers, and just making sure that we're available to coordinate as needed. As always, we're available for ad hoc should there be a no notice event that affects the region, and we'll stand up a coordination call. We're also working with the CIOs to figure out how we can better be a clearinghouse for information and leverage the existing technology that we already have to do that in a better way. And then finally, I'm working with Virginia, Maryland, and the District of Columbia to deploy some drone sensors to try to get some detection in place because we see that as one of the critical vulnerabilities that we have here in the National Capital Region. Right now, we're focused on specific areas associated with the America 250, and we're trying to get things put in place before June 1st. We've contracted with Axon, and they're going to be providing a detection as a service, which will then move that information over to the National Capital Region Coordination Center, which sort of oversees the airspace in the National Capital Region, and then they would make notifications as appropriate. So this actually came down from the National Security Council, and we've been working with our emergency management folks on this as well. So I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to be just that brief and hand things back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Mr. Boggs, Ms. Apia, Ms. Johnson, and Ms. Bulliver for your presentation today. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but I'm sure there's ample information if there's a need for follow-up information. But again, thank you for your presentation. So the final agenda item for today is an update on Talent Capital AI. This is an AI-powered workforce website and career training initiative launched by COG and regional partners in the fall of 2025. Today, we're joined by William Lopez, Build Within co-founder, and Paul Ken, District of Columbia Deputy Mayor for Education. At this time, I'll turn it over to our Executive Director for initial comments.
Let's get right to it, but it's I said my remarks at the start that we've got joint funding now coming out of Annapolis, Richmond, and the district to fund this for another 2 years, and we have talked about this, lots of articles out about how the regional economy is doing, the number of folks that are looking for work, and we observed working with Deputy Mayor Kind last year that each of your jurisdictions, we were around this table, stood up their own responsive effort to try to get folks into job fairs, job coaching, job selection, which is great. The problem was we had 25, 40, 50 different websites for folks to go to define what those resources are. And that is not coordinated in a way that is as helpful and responsive to residents of this region. So Talent Capital was stood up, and we launched that, Paul, in the fall with the mayor at JP Morgan, was that, and Chase. And more regional partners in any effort that I've been a part of, probably 40 to 50 regional groups, all of your chambers, local county, local workforce boards. And we've got some real interesting data now. It's become a data gold mine for your secretaries of labor and your workforce boards on what folks are looking for and what's available and where the gaps are. So with that, I'll hand it over to Deputy Mayor. Yeah.
Thanks, Clark. It is an honor to be back amongst colleagues here at COG. We managed to present at the retreat last fall, and we're thrilled to be able to provide an update today on some of the progress that we are seeing. The first point I wanted to make is just a huge vote of thanks to COG. We would not be able to be in the position if it wasn't for your championship and stewardship. Clark in particular has been helping ensure this effort is successful. And there were two quick thoughts I wanted to raise before we turn over to the presentation. The first one is this is truly regional. Yeah. And it's not just regional because we've been working to become a front door to elevate and raise up all of the incredible work happening across your jurisdictions, but we're talking to all the local community colleges about the idea of creating a shared course catalog. And we are working with economic development agencies and workforce boards to figure out how we can integrate our training more effectively, regardless of what jurisdiction you live in. So it is a truly regional effort in ways that I have not seen before. Secondly, we stood this up with displaced federal workers front and center. This is really as a response to DOGE, but it wasn't lost on anyone, and I'm sure no one in this room, that what we're learning about how to handle displaced workers and disruptions to the labor market will be very, very important for us all as we look to the next 2 or 3 years of AI enablement in our economy. We couldn't have asked for better partners than Build Within, the company behind the tech build. So I am really happy now to introduce Will Lopez, the president of Build Within, to walk through the status update.
First of all, thank you everyone for allowing us to actually share some data and information, and to Clark and to Paul for the opportunity to partner on such a critical initiative. I'll be remiss to say and second and double down on what Paul said around it being a collaboration across the region. To call out a few organizations: Worksource Montgomery, the workforce boards in Alexandria, Arlington, Prince William, Fairfax County, and in Washington, D.C., the D.C. Workforce Investment Council, the Department of Employment Services really have been, and more have been partners in a lot of this initiative. One of the things that, Talent Capital is the nation's first agentic AI free public platform that is allowing individuals and job seekers to connect to resources, careers, and vetted training opportunities all across the region. And like Paul said, this is really an opportunity for individuals to, rather than going into 50 different sites or go into a black tunnel, black hole of website searching, they can all get those resources in a single front door. Talent Capital is actually more than just a static website. It's actually an intelligent platform that allows individuals to connect with customized and personalized career opportunities, training opportunities, and then also additional resources that your regions have. The way that this works is actually it uses the latest AI models, and it does agentic orchestration with specified AI agents that focus on specific tasks. So think of this as sort of like an individual having a team of individuals that are looking for different career opportunities, different events or hiring events, job training opportunities, and also is a guide for them in helping them translate how their skills can match to new industries or new roles and opportunities across the region as well. The other part of this that's really important is that there's context awareness with the AI agent as well. So this agent doesn't just forget the conversation that they've had with the job seeker, your constituents. It actually continues the conversation post whatever action that person is asking for. So what we've seen throughout the course of the engagement is the AI agent learning the personalization of that individual person and making sure that they're able to provide recommendations that are tailor-made to that person in the moment of that engagement, whether they've come 17 times or 20 times, it doesn't matter. It remembers all of those engagements with them as well. A couple of the stats that I think are really important to kind of highlight here is that since the launch on October 1st, there's been over 100,000 unique users on Talent Capital. Currently, there's about 83,000 unique active users on Talent Capital right now that are matching to over 65,000 job listings. One of the trends that we saw post-launch at the beginning of October last year was that the first 3 or 4 months or 3 months of the launch of Talent Capital, what we noticed was a lot of the job seekers were coming onto Talent Capital, having conversations with the AI agent in order to help them translate the skills that they had gained in those government agency jobs into new industries and new roles. It also, one of the things that we noticed was that it also was something that they were looking for as to how do I name the skills or the things that I was doing at that public agency. As many of you have probably heard, it was very difficult for the transition for many folks, but more importantly, very difficult for them to even identify the work that they were doing in the language that is currently being used now for hiring those individuals. So most folks were in those jobs for 14, 20, 30 years, and coming out of that job, now they had to relearn the entire job market all over again. And so Celeste, the AI agent, was actually able to help navigate a lot of that and then recommend opportunities based on those translated skills. The other piece here, what we've seen most recently, is that through the engagement that those individuals have been having, now we're seeing an uptick in the conversations being around training opportunities and upskilling opportunities, specifically around project management, leadership, and AI or AI foundational skills as well. Currently, right now, there's 65,000 jobs that are active. These are full-time jobs that have salaries that are $45,000 and above. And so they don't include gig jobs or low wage jobs. A couple highlights here is that this is very different from a static or historical snapshot of job opportunities. These are active jobs that live on the site right now. And so the jobs agent is able to pull in and aggregate jobs that are active right now from different employers across the region and different job boards, dedupe those jobs, and actually match them to the people who are engaging with the AI agent. The other thing that the jobs agent is able to do in order to better serve your constituents, the job seekers, is that it actually does an analysis of the jobs and the job postings itself and gives us information regarding what skills those employers are looking for at this moment. And so top skills that we've seen most recently are personal skills or AI foundational skills or critical thinking type of skills, which all align to transferable skills that users have used or have talked about with the AI agent as they've engaged with Talent Capital. The other piece here too is that we'll see that healthcare is also a large segment, has a large sector of the jobs that are currently available now. Makes a lot of sense. That's actually a lot of those jobs are home healthcare aides or certified nurse technicians, individuals that help support doctors and registered nurses, a lot of the support of those industries as well. And then engineering and skilled trades is actually another job that's been rising, sector that's been rising up a lot more. To break it down, we've also seen a segment of the jobs growing in IT and engineering as well. This is specifically around cybersecurity, and it may be due to a lot of these contractors ramping up hiring for those cybersecurity type of jobs, especially with the deficit that's happening with the Department of Defense and their cybersecurity roles as well. One big piece here is that we've had real true partnership with the region. And so a good example of this is the Arlington or the Alexandria Arlington Workforce Regional Council. They've completely replaced their job board or their keyword search-based career page with Talent Capital in order to provide the clients that go into these service centers with a more personalized experience when it comes to the job recommendations that they need as well. The other thing that we ended up doing as well is, with Deputy Mayor Kine and the Department of Employment Services and the DC Workforce Investment Council, we were able to integrate Talent Capital to seamlessly create an eligibility pipeline to workforce services with the Department of Employment Services training programs. So typically in the past, an individual would go through a career page or find a training program and then have to walk into an American Job Center and then complete all of the eligibility requirements and then wait a few days, if not weeks, and then go through that process of going into that training program. They don't need to do that anymore. Straight in Talent Capital with the engagement that they have with the AI agent, they do the eligibility, they're able to submit their information, and then they get matched to the training opportunities and their eligibility is provided to them in that moment as well. So this is a truly unified program. Because we did that, we've now have had really great partnerships with the George Washington University, where we're offering project management certification courses to job seekers that have come on Talent Capital. We've also been able to provide more training opportunities with the University of the District of Columbia, and then career mentor services through Grounded Idealists for individuals that are looking for coach and mentoring services, and all of this being free of charge as well. One highlighter we'll note is that, we just got an email yesterday from one of the project management candidates that came through the program and came through Talent Capital. They just got their certification and they just had their second round of interviews going into their third. And so this individual's from Washington, D.C., by the way. So sorry for everyone else, can't take that credit yet. But we're working very closely with them to make sure that they get placed as well. Lastly, because we've seen a lot more engagement around training needs and wanting to connect to more training opportunities, starting in May, we are going to create virtual and asynchronous training around AI foundational skills free of charge for all constituents across the region. The other items that we're doing too is that because we have a lot of information regarding the job seeker's profile, we're now able to provide them not only more personalized matches to the opportunities that are available, but also within their engagement with Talent Capital, they can see which certifications they could receive and which training providers are providing those certifications in the region, and increase their likelihood of getting hired by those employers that are looking for those particular jobs as well. And then lastly, we are also creating an employer-facing portal, so allowing employers to connect with candidates directly. So we've had partners like Donahoe Hospitality who have highlighted several of their jobs and opportunities to Talent Capital job seekers. And now they're interested in actually receiving a pipeline of candidates directly from Talent Capital in order to make sure that they can hire those individuals because they see the benefit of their transferable skills to the roles that they have available now. And then lastly, we're also identifying 2 or 3 employer partners so that way we can co-design cohort curriculum where we understand what the skills are that they're looking for, find the best matches for them, and then once those job seekers find those, attain those skills or certifications, they get placed with that employer as well. So creating a direct pipeline from not knowing what type of opportunity is available to them straight into an employment based on the training that they receive. I'll end it there.
Yeah, thanks, Will. A couple quick follow-ups. And we're back on time, which is great. This really sparked a spirit of cooperation amongst the Secretaries of Labor and Workforce folks from DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Today, right now, in Johns Hopkins, at Marymount University, we've got 350 former federal workers at a Career Pivot Day, which is jointly hosted between DC, Maryland, Virginia's labor departments. Last month, it was at Johns Hopkins here in DC. These numbers and this population has not gone away. A Virginia stat which stands out, over 2 years, the state went from, they rank kind of how many one-way tickets folks book going out of the state, and it's a measure of how many folks are moving away from a region. The state went from 5th to 37th last year. And it was a big article in The Guardian this morning about just the number of folks still looking for work. So this is still very much an issue. And retaining these folks and getting a one employer household back to 2 employer, I mean, I don't have to tell anyone here, having gone through your budgets, this is still an issue. And, Will mentioned the number 1 job is healthcare. The way the states align their workforce development makes no sense being a zero-sum game, aligning skills and jobs of a kid in Alexander and a kid in Big Stone Gap. The number 1 job available in this region is healthcare worker. Montgomery College is the only community college in the country with a hospital co-located on its campus. Okay, Governor Moore is standing up a cybersecurity pathway, which is great. Northern Virginia Community College has the best cybersecurity program in the country. So having these folks talk about things like reciprocity for in-state tuition and keeping these folks in this region is really the next level of discussion to make it more seamless. I mean, when we started this, we were talking about paid internships, and one of the companies that we were talking to, the flavor of the dollar that they were getting from the state was, well, we have offices in Northern Virginia, Tyson's in DC, but we can only have the interns sit in the Tyson's office. That type of thinking makes no sense for this region. So this is really, and Paul has really been a leader in bringing his counterparts from Maryland and Virginia to the table to have these conversations. And with that funding that's sitting in the 3 budgets right now, we'll be able to continue to build on Talent Capital for the next 2 years. So it's really a new space for COG, but it was really demanded by what happened with the new administration and DOGE. But like Deputy Mayor said, I don't think this is going to be the only time we see the workforce go through something where we need to quickly pivot and get folks retrained and reemployed. So thank you, Will. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. With that, any questions before we close out? Ms. Bailey. Bailey and Ms. Mitchell.
I know. I'm trying to. My thing, thank you, it's on. Yeah, okay. I agree with you, Clark. Now's the time that we have to pivot. So how do we do that in reference to what you said about Northern Virginia Community College? It is a hub for us to execute. But sometimes as elected officials, we don't know exactly what that looks like. So that's the elephant in the room. I'm speaking. Okay. I'm sorry. That's the whatever in the room. But how do we get ahead of this? Because it's an absolutely awesome idea, but how do we execute and get ahead of this and integrate even more? So, because I mean, it's not getting any better. So what does that look like?
Thank you so much for the question, which I think in some ways is the most important question. And I think there are two parts to it. One is, how do we get ahead of this from the regional collaboration
Yes.
dimension that Clark was talking about? We were with NOVA officials 2 weeks ago. We went to visit NOVA, and we're talking about the articulation agreements that could be possible so that you can get access to the programming regardless of where you live. And there's this incredible enthusiasm amongst all the 5 or 6 regional community college presidents to develop something that looks and feels like a shared course catalog, so that we're not all trying to replicate each other's work, again, as Clark mentioned. So there's that component. There's the other very important component, which is, what should we be training on? Like, what are the skills that folks are going to need, not for the jobs today, but for the jobs next year and the year after? And there, we can only do that with incredibly strong partnerships with the employers. So, for example, Nicole Overly from Virginia hosted at the Board of Trade yesterday a focus group of senior executives from companies, and we helped to facilitate that. And we're asking them, what are your near-term hiring needs? Not who are you hiring for today, but who do you think you're going to need 6 months from now? Then it was very, very insightful. But I think those two things have to happen simultaneously.
And not just onesies, it has to continue. It has to be a continual thing. So, I mean, that would be my request.
Great.
And so I would just want to piggyback with my colleague just saying, in regards to us at the local level, how can we be supportive of this in a granular way? Because we meet this every day, trying to figure out how we support our constituents who are federal employees, who are one income. I'm gonna say College Park, we at the University of Maryland, we have so many people who are looking for assistance. And how can you help us try to think out of the box in respect of what you're doing? Because for us, I see this as a great win-win for me, and taking it back to my city to say, how can we partner with you to amplify this, but also put in some elements to help wrap it around in a box and put a bow on top of it to show others municipalities to do this as well. So I'm excited about the opportunity, but I'd like to hear more about what could we do as far as intentional next steps.
A great question, and I'll let Will chime in here. First thing is, you can make sure that everybody knows about talentcapital.ai.
Well, we done that.
So it's a very simple thing to do. But if all of your workforce programming and the entities that do that work in your city can actually ensure they're pushing out the idea that this exists, that would be extremely helpful. Secondly, we meet in discussion with workforce boards, economic development agencies all the time, and we are always open to do that. And we try to figure out individual partnerships, ways we can support each other. So that's the second thing I would suggest that you do. You can make the connections for us.
I appreciate that. I know my city, we've already reached out to Clark about using it, but I really think about the next steps and I'm always thinking about plans. How do we put the components into a plan to make it workable, doable, and then we don't have to sit here and try to figure it out. We can just cut and paste the program and give it to anybody else and they can do it as well.
Yeah, I think I'll add on to that as well. I think one of the things that's challenging for people is, and maybe you all can raise hands, but if you were to be laid off today, outside of being lawmakers and representatives for your constituents, how many constituents do you think know about workforce boards and the programmings that they offer? And so what we found with Talent Capital is that there's a, core cadre of training opportunities that are available that people didn't even know were around. And so something that you can do from your local jurisdiction outside of just, providing more visibility for Talent Capital, like we've done in Alexandria and some of these other places, but highlight some of those training opportunities and let us know about them so we can highlight them in Talent Capital as well. One thing that's very easy for us to do from a technology point of view, and not to get too techie, is if you tell us, Will, Paul, Clark, we have 5 programs and we have 5 slots that are available. Can you help us match those individuals? We can find the individuals that match to those opportunities through Talent Capital itself. And then we can keep posting those opportunities based on what people are looking for, because it is a personalized experience for that person as well.
Before we get to Mr. Lusk, a question, can you provide to the board a social toolkit or something of that magnitude to assist?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Mr. Lusk.
Yeah, I'll just say I really appreciate the work that's been done on this program and acknowledge how important it is for the region. The question I have is just thinking about kind of the metrics in terms of the tracking of the people and being able to show that they come in to the portal, but then they've gotten X training and then they've gotten
a specific opportunity. So just trying to understand, like, how do we show over time the entry and then the exit for the participants?
I am unsurprised that you went to the heart of the matter on this topic. So that is a work in progress, because if you think about the way we aggregate the jobs, we don't own many of the sites. They're owned by employers, sometimes third parties. And so once the individual leaves Talent Capital and goes to the external site to apply for the job, we lose track of them. Now, we have a couple of ideas about how to fix that. And this goes to the employer tools that Will was mentioning. Ideally, we'll be in a situation where employers will be so enthusiastic, they'll start posting jobs directly onto Talent Capital, because this is the very best regional kind of job posting site that we've got. And once they start doing that, we will then be in a very strong position to know who's applied, whether they were successful, and to work on the measures that way. But Will, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add is that part of the reason why we did it this way as well is intentional, because we had such a pressing challenge at the end of last year that we knew folks were going to come off of whatever the severance was that they were going to receive, and we needed to launch something really quickly. And one way to get employers, rather than shifting their entire HR processes, was linking out to those sites. But like Deputy Mayor Paul said, we are looking into making that process easier for them with an employer portal that will allow them to actually match to the candidates themselves. And I will note, this isn't matching just based on keywords. This is skill-based matching to the opportunities that those employers will have as well. So we validate the experiences and skills that the individuals have in order to match them to the best opportunities available in the region at the moment.
So the thought I have as well is that we do the same with the certifications and the training. So once they've completed X training or X certification, then we'd know where they go at the conclusion of that specific training or certification.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's easier, honestly.
That's what I thought.
Gentlemen, thank you again for the presentation. And before we adjourn the meeting today, is there any additional business before the board? With that stated, the next board meeting is on Wednesday, May the 13th at the Goodwill headquarters. And with that, our meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.
I was waiting for the.
All right. Hey, I make me take this one too.
Thank you. This is great.
You gotta eat both.